Victor Wembanyama is out for the season. We just got informed he has been diagnosed with a deep vein thrombosis, which means blood clots in his right shoulder, which means that with him being out for the rest of the year, he will not be eligible for awards anymore. He will not be getting Defensive Player of the Year because there is still around 30 games left in the season, and the most games that you can miss in a season is 18 before you get to that 65 game mark that the NBA set a couple years ago. This sucks for Wemby because, again, no Defensive Player of the Year, no All NBA for him. And this pretty much seals the deal about the Spurs probably will not be making the play-in push this year, which might be a blessing in disguise. Again, obviously not for Wemby. That's awful. Blood clots are horrible. That's what we saw Sar Thompson go through last year, and he was just now making his way back. So who knows how long this is going to have him out for once the season is even over. But I think that with this may potentially being something good for the Spurs is because the Spurs probably, even though it would probably be great for the play-in, and it would be a lot of fun to see Wemby and the Spurs with De'Aaron Fox newly acquired. This means that they will for sure get another lottery pick this year if they are missing the play-in. And they also have the Atlanta Hawks pick completely unprotected. So if Atlanta also misses the play-in, then the Spurs have two lottery picks in a pretty good draft class. It gives them more odds to get, higher players. They could jump in the odds, because they will not have the worst odds. Obviously, they're nowhere near what like Washington, New Orleans, Utah, and all of those teams are. But so they'll probably be around the 10 to 14 mark because they are pretty close to outside of the play-in. But but what I meant with it being a blessing in disguise is because we saw with Luka when he first got drafted, right? He got drafted, and then that first year, I believe they missed the playoffs. But then after that, they made the playoffs pretty much every year because Luka was that good to bring them into the playoffs, but obviously they were never good enough to completely win. And they never really got any other draft picks to help speed up the process. They got who was I? Dennis Smith Jr. was there the year before, but obviously he didn't turn out to anything crazy. They had Jalen Brunson, who wasn't what Brunson now is. He was, coming off the bench. And then other than really getting Derek Lively, there's not this past draft, but the draft before, is really the only draft pick that they had that had any value. And with the Spurs, they have something similar where they just drafted Stephon Castle. He is probably the Rookie of the Year winner as of today. And with Wemby being out, I mean, he's just going to get more touches, so he'll probably be first or second in the Rookie of the Year race. And they have a relatively young team, right? They drafted Jeremy Sohan a few years ago. Who knows what his future role is on this team when they really start to get serious and contenders, whether that is next season or the year after that. But getting potentially two lottery picks this year means that they can just keep drafting talent. They can, if they wanted to, they could use it in a trade like they did with they drafted Rob Dillingham and then shipped him to Minnesota because they gave them a future first later down the road, and they didn't really care to keep Dillingham. So they could either trade it or they could draft with it and just keep getting more players. Because next year, I would assume that Chris Paul probably isn't here unless he signs again for like a super small contract, because he's gonna be 40 this year or next year when the season is going. And I mean, you just traded for De'Aaron Fox, who's obviously should be your point guard, especially over an aging Chris Paul. But so it'll probably be next year. The lineup would probably be something around the lines of Fox, Castle, Vassell, and then either Harrison Barnes or Jeremy Sohan, and then Wemby. I don't know if Harrison Barnes, what his contract is. Um, he he's on the team next year making 19 million, and then after that he's a free agent, but who knows whether they start him or Sohan. I believe they've been starting Sohan a little, or not Sohan. I believe they've been starting Harrison Barnes. Yeah, he started every game this year so far. And Sohan's been in and out of the lineup, I believe. He's only played 33 games this year, and he's only started in 19 of them, so he's really been in and out. And you probably want to have a spacing around Wemby, with what he can do. Obviously, he can space the floor. You have a guy like De'Aaron who can shoot, but isn't known for it, obviously. And Jeremy Sohan really just doesn't give you that. He is shooting. Well, this year he's shooting 34% from three, but over his career he's a 29% 3-point shooter. So who knows how he could be wishy-washy too at times. But yeah, I think that the Spurs, even though this sucks, again, obviously for Wemby, for your franchise player, it's not the worst thing in the world. So they have stuff to look for. Hopefully they can get some good odds in the draft. And then this could be a scary team. They also could be a very expensive team in 3 to 4 years if, no major moves happen where they're not, because say they do draft with these 2 picks this year, that's 2 more lottery picks. You have, like we said, Sohan. Castle looks like he's going to be getting money if he keeps progressing with the way that he's going at. Again, it's only his first year, but and then obviously Wemby's going to need to get paid at some point too. De'Aaron Fox is making, I assume, mid 30s to 40s, mid 30 to 40 million. 34 this year, 37 next year. Then you're going to need to re-sign him after next year, which he will probably be making more than that $37 million mark. So that is a scary thing that they might have to think about, but I think this will be not the worst thing in the world. So you're not kind of getting a Lucas situation with the Mavericks where he's the solo guy, or was the solo guy for a while. And the only way you could get better was to just try and trade for guys at the deadline, or that maybe didn't have the value they once had. Like Porzingis wasn't the greatest fit. Again, Brunson was good, but he was young and he obviously couldn't develop to what he is with the Knicks. Kyrie obviously has been great with them. Were just in the finals last year. But yeah, I think that the Spurs have a bright future with how this might go for them, and they shouldn't be too bummed out for their team's sake. Again, it's awful for Wemby. This year, he was averaging 24 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3.8 blocks, 1.1 steals. He was shooting 35% from three on almost 9 attempts. 58% from 2-pointers and 83% from the field, or from free throws, in 46 games. So again, he's not going to get any awards this year, which sucks for him because he's only going to be playing 46 games. But he made an all-star team. He'll be back next year. Hopefully, this doesn't hold him out for too long, and the Spurs will come back, I'm sure, way better than they were this year or the year before.